Good leaders don't just react, they respond. They don't let their emotions dictate their actions. And yet, how many times have we let anger take over? How many times have we said something we regret or acted in a way that wasn't true to who we really are? See, anger is a natural emotion. It's a signal. But staying calm when anger takes over, that's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. Today I want to show you how great leaders, strong individuals, and those who inspire us the most have mastered the ability to stay calm in the face of anger. Because in the end, it's not about suppressing anger, it's about understanding it. And when you understand it, you control it instead of letting it control you. Anger doesn't come out of nowhere. It has a trigger, a starting point, a moment when something shifts inside us. That trigger could be an action, a word, a tone, or even an unspoken expectation that wasn't met. The problem is, most of the time, we don't even realize it's happening. We just feel the surge of emotion and react. But if we take a step back, we can start to notice the patterns. What are the moments that consistently make us angry? What are the situations that push our buttons? Is it when someone interrupts us? When we feel unheard? When we're disrespected? The key is to slow things down and pay attention. Most of us live on autopilot, moving from one emotion to the next without questioning them. But when we start to become aware of what sets us off, we regain control. Instead of being hijacked by our emotions, we can catch the trigger in real time. This doesn't mean we won't feel anger, it just means we'll understand why it's happening. And once we understand it, we can choose how to respond. Triggers often have deep roots. Sometimes they come from childhood experiences, past failures, or unresolved fears. That's why two people can face the same situation and react in completely different ways. What frustrates one person might not even register for someone else. So recognizing a trigger isn't just about the present moment, it's about understanding where it comes from. When we trace our anger back to its source, we start to see the bigger picture. Maybe it's not the rude comment that's making us angry, but the feeling of not being valued. Maybe it's not the mistake that's bothering us, but the fear of failure. Pausing before reacting is one of the most powerful tools we have when dealing with anger. In the heat of the moment, emotions can feel overwhelming, pushing us to respond impulsively. But the difference between a reaction and a response is a simple pause. A brief moment where we regain control instead of letting anger dictate our actions. This pause doesn't have to be long. Even a few seconds can make a significant difference. It gives us the space to breathe, think, and decide how we want to handle the situation. When anger takes over, the body goes into fight or flight mode. The heart rate increases, breathing becomes shallow, and tension builds. This is when we are most likely to say or do something we'll regret. But if we train ourselves to pause before reacting, we break this automatic cycle. Instead of snapping back with harsh words, we can take a deep breath. Instead of making a rash decision, we can step away for a moment. These small actions create a buffer between emotion and action, allowing logic and reason to step in. The pause also gives us a chance to assess the situation. Is this worth my energy? Am I seeing the full picture, or am I reacting based on assumptions? Will this matter an hour from now, a day from now, a year from now? Asking these simple questions in that brief moment of pause can completely shift our perspective. Most of the time, anger fades when given space, and we realize that our initial reaction wasn't necessary. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about giving ourselves the time to choose a response that aligns with who we truly are, rather than letting temporary emotions take control. Shifting your perspective is one of the most effective ways to manage anger. When something upsets us, our natural instinct is to see the situation through our own lens. Our emotions, our experiences, our expectations. But what if we could step outside of that? What if, instead of being consumed by our own frustration, we could see things from a different angle? This shift in perspective doesn't mean dismissing our feelings, but rather expanding our view to include other possibilities. Often, anger is fueled by assumptions. We assume someone was being rude on purpose. We assume they meant to disrespect us. We assume their actions were driven by bad intentions. But what if they weren't? What if that person who cut you off in traffic was rushing to the hospital? What if the colleague who snapped at you was dealing with something personal? What if the friend who didn't text back simply forgot, not because they don't care, but because their mind was somewhere else? By considering these alternative explanations, we take power away from anger. Another way to shift perspective is to zoom out. In the grand scheme of life, how big is this problem really? Will this matter a year from now, 5 years from now? So many of the things that make us angry are temporary and insignificant when we take a step back. When we expand our view, we start to see that most conflicts aren't personal. They're just moments, and moments pass. Perspective is a choice. It's the ability to look at the same situation and decide how we want to interpret it. The moment we train ourselves to shift our perspective, we gain the ability to defuse anger before it takes control. It's not about ignoring what happened, but about seeing it in a way that allows us to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Controlling your physiology is one of the fastest ways to regain control when anger starts to take over. The mind and body are deeply connected, and when anger rises, the body responds immediately. Your heart rate speeds up, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, and adrenaline floods your system. This physiological shift puts you in a fight or flight state, making it difficult to think clearly or make rational decisions. But the good news is that by changing your physical state, you can also change your emotional state. One of the simplest and most effective ways to do this is through controlled breathing. When anger takes over, the breath becomes rapid and shallow, fueling more tension. By intentionally slowing your breathing, taking deep inhales through the nose, holding for a few seconds, and exhaling slowly, you send a signal to your nervous system that it's time to calm down. This shift immediately starts to reduce tension and bring your emotions back under control. Posture also plays a key role. Anger often causes the body to tighten, shoulders hunch, fists clench, and the jaw stiffens. But when you consciously relax your posture, dropping your shoulders, unclenching your hands, loosening your facial muscles, you trick your brain into a calmer state. Movement helps too. Walking away from a heated situation, stretching, or even shaking out tension can break the cycle of anger. Another powerful technique is lowering your voice. When people are angry, they naturally raise their voices, which escalates tension. But when you deliberately speak more slowly and quietly, it has a calming effect, not only on you, but also on those around you. Small physiological adjustments like these might seem simple, but they have a profound impact on how anger is processed and managed in real time. Asking yourself why in moments of anger can transform the way you respond to difficult situations. Anger is rarely just about what's happening in the moment. It's often tied to something deeper. But most of the time, we don't stop to question it, we just react. However, if we take a moment to ask ourselves why we're truly angry, we begin to uncover the real source of our emotions. Sometimes, anger is a mask for something else. It might be covering up hurt, insecurity, or fear. For example, if someone criticizes your work and you immediately feel angry, is the anger really about the criticism, or is it about a deeper fear of not being good enough? If a friend cancels plans at the last minute, and you feel frustrated, is it really about the canceled plans, or is it about feeling unimportant? By asking, why am I really angry, we start to see what's beneath the surface. This level of self-awareness allows us to respond rather than react. Instead of lashing out, we can address the real issue. If our anger comes from feeling disrespected, we can communicate that calmly instead of escalating the situation. If it comes from insecurity, we can remind ourselves that external opinions don't define our worth. If it comes from fear, we can acknowledge it and find a way to manage it. Anger can feel powerful, but it often blinds us to the truth. Asking why slows everything down and gives us clarity. It shifts the focus from blaming others to understanding ourselves. And the more we understand, the more control we have over our emotions. Instead of being at the mercy of anger, we learn how to channel it in a way that leads to growth and resolution. Using a mental anchor is a powerful way to stay calm when anger starts to take over. A mental anchor is a word, phrase, or thought that grounds you in the moment and helps you regain control before reacting impulsively. Just like a ship drops an anchor to stay steady during a storm, a mental anchor keeps you centered when emotions try to pull you in the wrong direction. Anger often triggers a fight or flight response, making it difficult to think rationally. But when you have a mental anchor prepared in advance, you create a pause between the emotion and your reaction. This could be a simple phrase like, "Stay in control," "I choose peace," or "Not worth my energy." It could also be a reminder of your values, such as, "I am patient," or "Strong people don't lose control." The key is to choose something that resonates with you and immediately shifts your focus from reacting to responding. Some people use visualization as a mental anchor, imagining a calm ocean, a peaceful place, or even picturing yourself successfully handling the situation can instantly change your emotional state. Others rely on personal mantras or even counting down from 10 to create enough space for logic to step in. The goal is to break the automatic cycle of anger before it takes over. A well-practiced mental anchor becomes second nature over time. When used consistently, it creates a habit of self-control, allowing you to stay composed even in stressful situations. Instead of letting anger dictate your actions, you train your mind to respond in a way that aligns with your best self. The more you use it, the stronger its effect becomes, making it one of the simplest yet most effective tools for emotional resilience. Responding instead of reacting is the key to maintaining control when anger tries to take over. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often impulsive. It comes from a place of instinct rather than thought. A response, on the other hand, is intentional, measured, and aligned with who you truly want to be. The difference between the two is the space you create between the trigger and your action. When anger rises, the natural impulse is to lash out, defend, or retaliate. But in most cases, reacting without thinking only escalates the situation and leads to regret. Responding requires discipline. It means pausing, taking a breath, and considering the best course of action. It means asking yourself, what outcome do I actually want, instead of just acting on emotion? This shift in mindset prevents temporary frustration from causing long-term damage to relationships, reputations, and personal peace. A powerful way to train yourself to respond instead of react is to practice emotional detachment in heated moments. Instead of letting anger take the driver's seat, step outside of yourself for a moment and observe what's happening. Imagine you're watching the situation from the outside. This slight distance gives you clarity and allows you to make decisions based on logic rather than frustration. Another useful strategy is to focus on your desired outcome. If the goal is to resolve a conflict, shouting or reacting aggressively won't help. If the goal is to be understood, attacking the other person won't work. Responding means choosing words and actions that move the situation toward a productive resolution rather than escalating it further. The more you practice this skill, the easier it becomes to navigate difficult situations with composure, ensuring that you stay in control instead of letting anger control you. Practicing empathy is one of the most effective ways to stay calm when anger tries to take over. Anger often stems from feeling wronged, disrespected, or misunderstood, but when we shift our focus from ourselves to the other person, our perspective changes. Instead of seeing them as an opponent, we start to see them as human, flawed, just like us, dealing with their own struggles, fears, and frustrations. Empathy doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It means recognizing that most people don't act out of malice. They act out of their own pain, stress, or insecurity when someone is rude, dismissive, or aggressive. It's easy to take it personally, but what if they're having a terrible day? What if they just received bad news? What if they're struggling with something you can't see? Shifting from "they're attacking me" to "they might be struggling" immediately reduces the intensity of your anger. One way to cultivate empathy in the moment is to ask yourself, what might this person be going through? Or, if I were in their shoes, how would I want to be treated? Even if you don't have all the answers, just considering another person's perspective can soften your response. It allows you to approach the situation with understanding rather than hostility. Empathy also creates better communication. When anger takes over, conversations become battles. But when we lead with empathy, we listen more and assume less. We focus on solving the problem rather than winning the argument. It's not about letting people walk over you, it's about choosing to rise above the situation. The more we train ourselves to see others with understanding rather than judgment, the easier it becomes to stay calm and navigate conflicts with wisdom. Detaching from ego is essential when it comes to managing anger effectively. Often, our anger is tied to a threat to our ego, our sense of self-worth or pride. When we feel disrespected, overlooked, or insulted, the natural response is to defend ourselves and protect our image. But this attachment to ego can blind us to the bigger picture and make us more reactive than necessary. When we detach from our ego, we shift our focus from how does this affect me to what's really happening here. This detachment allows us to view the situation more objectively and respond with clarity. It removes the emotional charge that ego feeds on, preventing us from making decisions driven by pride or a desire to prove ourselves. A powerful way to detach from ego is to remind yourself that not everything is about you. People's actions often have more to do with their own struggles, insecurities, or circumstances than they do with you. When someone criticizes you, it might feel personal, but it's often a reflection of their own frustrations, not an attack on your character. By recognizing this, you create the space to respond with understanding rather than defensiveness. Another important practice is to let go of the need to always be right. Anger often arises when we feel the need to defend our position, win an argument, or prove our point. But in many situations, being right doesn't matter as much as maintaining peace and moving forward. Letting go of this need can significantly reduce the intensity of anger and open the door for productive dialogue. When we detach from ego, we align ourselves with our higher values: compassion, humility, patience, and we learn to navigate conflicts with grace rather than getting caught up in unnecessary battles. By focusing on the bigger picture instead of personal pride, we create a calm, centered space where we can handle situations more effectively. Turning anger into growth is one of the most powerful ways to harness its energy constructively. Anger, though often seen as a destructive force, can also be a catalyst for personal transformation if we know how to channel it. Instead of letting anger consume us or cause harm, we can use it to fuel positive change and self-improvement. One way to turn anger into growth is to ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Anger often highlights areas of vulnerability or unresolved issues. It can point to things that trigger us, whether it's a feeling of injustice, a fear of failure, or a lack of respect. By examining these triggers, we gain insight into our deeper beliefs and values. This self-awareness is the first step in personal growth. Instead of reacting blindly, we begin to understand what's really at play beneath the surface. Anger can also motivate action. When we feel frustrated by a situation, it can spark a desire to change things for the better. Whether it's addressing a problem at work, advocating for ourselves in relationships, or standing up for what's right, anger can drive us to take steps toward improvement. The key is to channel that energy into productive actions rather than letting it spiral into negativity or resentment. Finally, turning anger into growth means using it as a tool for emotional resilience. Every time we manage anger in a healthy way, we strengthen our ability to deal with future challenges. We build emotional intelligence, patience, and self-control. By learning to navigate anger with grace, we grow stronger, more grounded, and better equipped to handle life's inevitable frustrations. Instead of allowing anger to hold us back, we transform it into an opportunity to evolve and become the best version of ourselves. In conclusion, staying calm when anger takes over isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending that challenges don't affect us. It's about understanding our emotions, taking control of our responses, and choosing to rise above the situation. By recognizing our triggers, pausing before reacting, shifting our perspective, controlling our physiology, asking ourselves why, using mental anchors, responding instead of reacting, practicing empathy, detaching from ego, and turning anger into growth, we gain the ability to manage our emotions in a way that aligns with our best selves. The truth is, we can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. When we master the art of staying calm, we not only improve our own lives, but also create a positive impact on the people around us. By embracing these strategies, We transform anger from a force that holds us back into a tool that propels us forward, building resilience, wisdom, and emotional strength along the way. So the next time anger tries to take over, remember, you have the power to choose your response, and in doing so, you unlock the potential for growth and peace.